All right. Well, it is so good to see everybody back. It looks like we have quite the full house today. We have 175 participants and still climbing. So that's going to be quite the record. We are so glad to have you back. For those of you, we know we have a lot of new people. I know we've certainly been taking a lot of calls from people who are saying we are new to RSA, we're new to our position, we're new to Oklahoma. What is this thing we keep hearing about? So we are glad to have you here. Let me see.
Did it say you're finished? I don't think it said you're.
You don't. There we go. And I think I need to make sure that I have, while I am doing this, I'm going to make sure that I have a couple of opportunities for my colleagues to introduce themselves. We have on the call with us Brenda Beamer Chapman, who is our Director of Social Studies, Personal Financial Literacy, who also does a lot with our literacy team. She is a part of our literacy team. Believe it or not, she does tons of stuff with our literacy, knows quite a lot there. And then we have returning to the Oklahoma State Department of Education is Sharon Morgan. So many of you will remember Sharon as our former Director of Early Childhood. She is now returning in the role of our Director for Elementary English Language Arts. So Deb Wade has moved on to another opportunity here in the State Department. So that she is working with family engagement, which is a topic near and dear to her heart. So we are happy for her, and we're so glad to have Sharon and her expertise joining us again. So Sharon and Brenda, I think I've got you down as co-hosts now that you can see the, right, perfect. Sorry, I forgot to do that earlier. Okay, so you will find in the chat, one of my colleagues will help me with that, our agenda, the link to our running agenda. For those of you that are new to these meetings, we keep a running agenda that you can go back to, refer to. We just try to keep those notes available for you there. I am sharing my screen. Hopefully it's visible. Sharon or Brenda, can you unmute and let me know? Yep, you can see it. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I can't, when I start sharing a screen, for those of you that are used to dealing with Zoom, you can't see all of those beautiful faces when we start talking. So, but we wanted to have this opportunity to get together monthly. We have found it very, very useful over the last couple of years. This is one of those silver linings that has come out of COVID, of an opportunity to connect and just kind of crowdsource some ideas and troubleshoot some things that come about, especially with something like early literacy that just tends to have a lot of those little nuances that come with it. It's pretty easy to say, here's the black and white issues, but then we have all of those things that come in that make it nice and confusing that we just need to have an opportunity to talk out. So I'm very fortunate to have a team with Sharon and Brenda to be able to help address those questions. We also have a new team member, Dylan Savage. I do not know that he is on the call today. He might be. But he is our new reporting specialist. So he does not have a background in reading, but he is very, very good with data. And so all of those fun reports on single sign-on, he is been thrown into the deep end of the pool and is learning how to navigate those reports so that he can help with questions that you might have as far as the technical issues of when things aren't working, or what does this process look like? How do we access certain things? Because that's what we've been busy doing this last week, is trying to help make sure people are able to access everything that they need. So you will probably be hearing or getting some emails from Dylan upon occasion, especially around RSA reporting. So it is legitimate. He is working with us. He is a great addition to our team. So it's just nice to know those names that are coming at you on those emails. Okay, I see we still have people joining, but we're going to go ahead and keep going. I know we've got quite a bit on this agenda that we want to make sure that you have access to. You will have access to this agenda again afterwards. Just, you might want to bookmark this Google Doc so that you have it to refer to, because we just update it and put the new month at the top so that you will have it all year long. You'll notice down here in the footer, we have the link to last year's writing agenda. So if there were some things from last year, that's fine. Just remember, if you ever find conflicting information, keep in mind that the most recent is going to be the correct information, because as we all know, sometimes things change. And so you might find something that's conflicting a little bit as we have received new direction or new laws get passed, things like that. So we're going to start with RSA reports, because that is what we are right in the middle of right now, is dealing with RSA reports. Fall is fun because we have 3 different reports that run pretty much concurrently. And it gets really confusing, especially for our poor superintendents who have so many other things on their plate. When we call and say, you need to do this report, they're going, we just certified it last week. No, that was a different report. Now we've got this other one that's open now. So please be kind to your administrators, because they don't always deal with all this, and they forget that we have several that run right in a row for RSA. There is an updated timeline on the RSA coordinator page that you'll find that outlines the different reports for those of you new to RSA. We have our annual district reading plan that is due next week. We will be going more in depth to that in just a moment. The beginning of year report, which is currently open and due at the end of September. Usually October 1, but October 1 is a Saturday. So we have September 30th here as just a way to help you remember that that's coming up. Then remembering that we do our individualized program of reading instruction no later, by the end of that second quarter. Really, that's been a little late, just keeping in mind. And then we have some information here about our characteristics of dyslexia screening that is new this year. Again, we will hit this a little bit more in depth. Just be patient with us. And then the 3rd grade promotion retention report, which will open up in mid-September, and it will be due November 1st, where we're reporting out those 3rd grade students from the previous school year that did not meet RSA criteria, so that we can figure out how were they promoted or were they retained. And then finally, in the spring, we will do the end of year report in May, May. They'll do at the end of May. Keep in mind, anything that we are needing to report for screening for characteristics of dyslexia this year will be reported out on the end of year report. So we have noted that new data that will be asked for, so that you can kind of keep that in mind throughout the year as you're gathering that data, what you will need to be able to report out by the end of the year. Okay. We did not want to add another report to your plate for dyslexia. We knew we had the means to be able to add it onto our existing reports. But for right now, also within the time frame, it needed to be the end of year report so that OMES had sufficient time to develop those new fields. Programming takes quite a bit more time than I ever realized that it does. So okay, so just an idea, remember that timeline. You can find all of these things that we're going to talk about today on the RSA coordinator webpage. Let me get back to the top so you recognize that. If you'll remember, our RSA coordinator webpage, the very first thing, we'll have our schedule for these meetings. Obviously, you all found it. It was also sent out. We will also send out that newsletter reminder when these are coming up to let you know. You can also find, if you forget how to log in, there's the Zoom meeting ID and the password. This will not change for these meetings. It will be the same ID, same password for each of these occurrences. We are recording this meeting, and so after this meeting today, we will send this to be processed on YouTube, and we will link the recording to these dates here, so that if you are ever unable to attend a meeting, or you have somebody that you know that needs to see it who was not able to be here, then you can just send them that recording or let them know that's where you go, so that they can go through that and get the information that they need. Then you'll find the information about the timeline and the different reports right below that we were just talking about. Okay. For those of you also that are new to RSA and you need that quick reminder, I'm going to remind you that right here we do have updated the quick guide for educators on this. It's a 2-page document. It is in tiny print because it's a lot of information, but we did want it to be on one piece of paper You will find the assessment requirements for K through 3. Remember the preventative part of our RSA when we're talking about how do we make sure that our kids are getting what they need. And then on the back side, the second page will be the information around promotion and retention decisions for 3rd grade. Okay, so this is the front part is our K through 3. The back part is specifically for 3rd grade promotion and retention. Okay, I'm not going to stop and ask for questions yet because we just kind of gave you a quick overview. I see that chat going crazy, and Brenda and Sharon are monitoring it very carefully. Just to say up front, because we have so many people, we have a lot to get through. We know we may not hit every single question, but please know that we do save this chat. We will make sure that if there's something that we did not get addressed, that we will make sure that it gets out there. But Sharon and then Brenda will make sure that we get to everything we need to. I do want to go a little bit more in depth though before we stop for questions and talk about the annual district reading plan. So remember the annual district reading plan, it is due next month. You can find it on single sign-on. If you go to the State Department website with resources and then go to our single sign-on, you will need to enter in your information for how to log in. You'll go to the annual district reading plan right here, okay? Keep in mind, this is where we get very confused sometimes. We have 4 different roles that we can have for this plan. There is the superintendent, a district user, which a district user has all the same rights and views as the superintendent, except that they are not able to certify. Then there is the building principal, and then a site user. Again, the site user has the same views as the building principal, but they are not able to confirm that site plan. Okay, so and I'm not going to open that up because I don't want to put anyone's data out there for everyone to be able to see. But keeping in mind that there are 2 sides to the reading plan. There is the district part that has the timeline and the funding that is looking at for the whole district. That one can only be seen by the superintendent and a district user. So if a principal is going in and logging in as the principal, they will not see that page. It's important to remember here in a moment. The site plan, each site that serves K through 3 students is visible by all 4 roles, the principal and the site user, as well as the superintendent and district user. The reason this is important is when we go into single sign-on, and I go in to look at our fund list that we are looking at all of our statuses. So we have all of our statuses here, okay? But you'll notice that some say not started. My guess is that most of those districts have started something. Those principals are on top of it. But the district side of the plan has not yet been opened. And that's why we're getting that not started signal. So if we're sending an email to your superintendent saying, hey, you haven't started this yet, if all the superintendent is doing is forwarding it to the principal and the principal's going, I've done it, that's the problem. It's principals or coordinators, tell your superintendent, we need you to open up the district side of the plan. That's why we're getting that not started message, okay? I know that can be really confusing for our districts that only have one site, and especially for the superintendent, who's also the principal, who's also the bus driver, who's also the teacher. So that system works better for our larger districts with multiple sites. There's never going to be one perfect system for everything. But if you do have problems finding that, or you're getting those messages, please shoot either me or Dylan an email, a phone call. Emails work best right now. I will be honest, I'm getting about, I think yesterday I logged about 300 emails and phone calls. So if I haven't gotten to you yet, you're still on my list, and I will try to get to you as fast as I can, but that is literally the numbers that we're getting. So we just want to make sure that you're aware that we are not ignoring you. We do promise. There is a little bit of a confusion this year with the reading plan and fall accreditation visits. So as you are aware, we are starting dyslexia screening this year, and on the fall accreditation checklist for your superintendents, There is a line item that says that the superintendent will make sure that the reading plan has been updated with the name of identifying the dyslexia screener that's being used. There is not a place on the reading plan that we are noting the dyslexia screener. We're collecting that information on the end of year report, like we talked about earlier. So I've talked to the accreditation office. We just had a misunderstanding there, and they are fine with having just a statement of assurance so that you are not trying to figure out how to go back into that plan and where to put it. You can just do on a piece of paper saying District X will use the name of this screener for the 22-23 school year for screening for dyslexia. And that's a statement of assurance letting the RAO know that you are aware of that statutory requirement, and this is how you're planning on completing that. The RAOs have all been informed of that they are fine with that to be able to accept it. So just so you're aware, hopefully that'll alleviate a little bit of concern there. That's a lot of our calls that we've been getting is we wanted to have to go back in and open the plan back up for editing to add in that dyslexia screener. So keep in mind, if you've already done it, it's fine. If you found a place to put it, no problem. But if you haven't, that statement of assurance will take care of that accreditation line item. Two new parts on the reading plan that we want to make sure that you're aware of and that we want to spend a moment of time talking about on the district side under reading sufficiency funds. There is a new section that says, we just put this long explanation, beginning with the 22-23 school year, districts that receive more than $2,500 in RSA allocation must spend no less than 10% on professional development for teachers in pre-K through grades 5. It is to discuss in reading instruction and how students learn to read. So what we are asking is if you would please indicate what is the approved program that your district will use for this training in that grade range. And we're going to go a little more in depth in this requirement. What we're looking for, though, on the plan itself is the name of one or more approved professional development programs you plan on using this year. We are not looking for your entire professional development plan here. We are trying to figure out, are you aware of this new requirement this year? And what are you planning to look at to change this? Now, we know that there's a couple of issues. We know that you don't get your allocation yet. So we're asking you to use last year's allocation to make a good faith estimate on what you think that might be. We know that you can change this if you need to. This is a plan. Plans are not set in stone. So if you're looking at this and you come back with that allocation, it's different. You need to make some adjustments or you get more information in the meantime because you just found out and you don't really have time to research a lot of stuff. It's okay to make those changes. We will be double checking all of that through our OCAS codes towards the end of the year. So it will be fine. So, but what we're looking here is just the name of one or more of those professional development plans that you plan on using. On the site part of the reading plan, on the intervention outside of the 90-minute reading block, when you go into each of those rows to identify like what you're using for a particular grade level at tier 2 or tier 3. At the bottom, you'll notice where it used to say for computer-based programs, how will you progress monitor? That was something that we felt was really not data that we really needed to collect any longer. And we had a new requirement with our dyslexia screening bill that we have to report out to the legislature the names of programs that districts are using for meeting the needs of students with characteristics of dyslexia. So we've repurposed that data collection field to identify the names of the intervention programs for students identified as having characteristics of dyslexia. Specifically, what are those programs that you are using that address things like phonemic awareness and phonics, those skills that we know that students with dyslexia need help with, and this should also be phonics and spelling. Okay, so let's make sure that we have both of those. There we go. So again, we're not looking for an entire process here. what we're looking for is the name of some of those programs, okay, that specifically you feel are going to address these types of skills. Okay, let me stop there. Brenda and Sharon, I know you've been getting a ton of questions. Are there any that are specific around reports or the reading plan? Yeah, if one of you want to unmute, are you able to unmute and talk to me?
Yeah, yes and no, but here we go. So one that just came on about the reading plan, it says on the annual site plan, tier 2 and 3 only give very specific options to choose from, for example, 4 or 5 days or minutes. This doesn't align with the quick guide for 22-23 that says as needed based on student needs.
Okay, and you are right. We did not catch that prior to the plan being open. We just had so many moving parts that was a mistake on my part, and I sincerely apologize. What we would ask this year, because since it's already opened, we cannot make changes on the different options in the plan. We would have to reject everybody's plan and completely start over, and I don't think anybody wants that. So we're asking that you choose the options available that are closest to what you are doing. We will keep in mind that you had limited options, and we will make sure that that is corrected before we fill out the plans for next year. I know that that is not ideal, but it is probably the best that we can do for you this year.
Okay, so a lot of the questions are about different things about the plans.
Okay.
There's one question asked a couple of times about where do we put the assurance statement, and that's with accreditation.
So you'll
That's
hold
on accreditation, right?
Yeah, you'll hold on to that when your RAO comes to visit for their accreditation visit. Then that's the statement that you'll hand to them. I know when I was in the district, I just kept a notebook of those documents that I would be able to hand to the RAO to say, here's our evidence for the different things on the checklist, and that statement of assurance would be with that.
Okay, I'm still just scrolling for plan
I gotcha.
questions. One is, can a select group of teachers attend the PD for the 10% requirement, or does everyone have to attend that?
That's a great question. Let me skip down to that part, because I know that that's one that is a huge part of confusion right now. So for our Science of Reading professional development, this is under a statutory requirement. So you can go in and see that statute. The translation, the short version is that with this year, if you receive more than $2,500 in RSA funds, that we need to spend at least 10% on professional development in the science of reading. This is a requirement for the amount of funding, not a requirement for all teachers. So this is not all teachers have to attend this. So it might be for some of our schools that received less funding, it might be only one teacher that's going. So if I were an administrator, I might be thinking about maybe my reading specialist or one of my teachers that is very interested in furthering what they are learning about. I probably am not going to start with my most reluctant teachers. I'm going to start with my gung-ho teachers and try to get everybody else to come on board. There is a guidance document that is, again, on the RSA coordinator webpage. We have an RSA professional development webpage that we're getting ready to clean everything up and move that to, so that you have that listed. You'll have an idea of some questions that are asked. So if this is short, it will continue to grow as we get more questions, but you'll get the idea of what is expected. On the web page, let's get back to that. You will see down, if you scroll down, see where it says RSA funding. We have this information. There's our programs. And then it looks like the page ends. Again, we've got some formatting issues that we're working through. The RSA pages are probably going to be changing in the next few weeks as we're cleaning this up. But we promise we won't take the important information down. Keep on scrolling and you will see a table. These are all of the approved programs so far, along with their information for what they are focused on, what if they have if they're program agnostic, in other words, they can work with anything, or if they support a particular product from that vendor. Maybe who it's recommended for. Some of them, like for example, this one is recommended for 4th or 5th grade teachers. So this is not where I would want to send a pre-K teacher to go. Some of them are for maybe only leaders, like our administrators or coaches. Some of them we've tried to identify if they are available through asynchronous or synchronous, virtual, or if they could be offered in person, or a combination of both asynchronous and live sessions. So you'll kind of get the idea of where we've tried to do that. How long the program takes. Some of these run, for example, like letters, which is 104 hours versus another program that's only 6 hours. So it runs the full gamut of those things. Some are very comprehensive and some are dealing with just one area of instruction, such as vocabulary. We've tried to put pricing for either individuals or cohorts so that you can make some decisions there. If districts wanted to go in together, like we had 3 or 4 districts that are close by one another, and to make a group, could work that way as well. Any additional materials that might be required, if they are endorsed, like by the International Dyslexia Association, or they use Orton Gillingham. And then we did allow the vendors to provide 1 or 2 pages describing their program, just for your quick reference as well. So just so you know that is there. We will be adding on to this list this year. This group will not go away, but we will be adding on to it as well. I've had a lot of people call and say, I can't find the IPRI anymore. It's taken off the website. It's because it's down below this table. So we think that there's this break. Remember, it's not finished. We've got to keep going down here to kind of get to all of our sample documents. Okay. But keep in mind, it could be one person, it could be a grade level, it could be all of your teachers. If you have a lot, it could be your coaches that work, but anybody who's working with pre-K through 5th grade, this is what it's eligible for. This is not for our middle school and high school teachers. We'll have to find some other funding sources there. And remember, it is only 10% of those funds. It's not all of your funds. So this is not, if you've got, these are good programs, and they all deal with teaching reading. You may have other professional development money that you want to spend on something else not on this list. This is not meant to encompass all of your professional development. There may be some program, and we know that there were some vendors that asked us to review their program, and we were not able to include it because it did not deal directly with reading instruction. And that's what we were focused on for this, was reading instruction. So if it was things like how to provide a test, like just how to give the STAR exam or how to read a report, that's not included because it's not addressing reading instruction, if that helps make sense a little bit there. All right, Brenda, what else?
So I don't see anything specific to the reading plan online. A lot of them are just questions about RSA. So
okay, well, we'll keep going. I know we'll get to more, and I know we will not hit all of the questions because I'm seeing how quickly it's scrolling by. We did want to make sure that you are aware on screening assessment that there is a new implementation guidance for early literacy screening. Again, it's on the OSDE webpage right there. It is extensive. It is talking about how do we address early literacy screening, including for the characteristics of dyslexia. So it is dealing with what does that instruction look like, MTSS, what do we do with the information once we get it, as well as our approved screening instruments that we have, and where does the past fit in. Just so you have this, I know that several of you have looked at this. We talked a lot about this for those of you that came to engage. This was what our focus was. I do want to point out our timeline here for screening for both universal screening under RSA as well as dyslexia. But this back part here is strategies for family support. So on the IPRI, we are required to provide ways that the families can provide support for their students at home. And many times that turns into a blanket read for 20 minutes at home. For students that are struggling with reading, they probably need a little more direction than that. So our friends in Arizona worked and gave us permission to use some of the work that they have done of gathering what those activities could look like. So coming back down to what is the student's issue? What are they struggling with? Now, what are some of these specific activities that we can provide for parents? So we would not want to print all of these pages and say, here, go do these to a family member. That would be a bit overwhelming, but it might be that if a student is working on phonological awareness, this might be a full page that I can hand them, or maybe I want to just pull out 1 or 2 activities to say for them to do. So a way to help maybe streamline that portion of the IPRI and make it more meaningful as we work to make our families partners with helping the students that are struggling with that reading acquisition. So you'll see there's quite a bit. It comes all the way down, dealing with phonological awareness, phonics, reading fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Okay, so maybe your students are reading accurately, they know all the words, but they're really struggling with understanding what they've read once they've read it. So here's some things that we can do to help with those types of skills. Technical guidance, and I will guarantee that a lot of the questions that we have right now in the chat is, what are the cut scores for? Fill in the blank. We were hoping to have that up today. I have been trying to tag a couple of vendors on the phone to clarify a couple of questions that I'm getting asked that I don't have questions for. So we're trying to get those up here in the next day or two so that you have them. Keep in mind, you already have all of the information you need from the vendor. The vendor is the one that has done their normed studies. They have identified what those scores are that align to the 40th percentile. The 40th percentile is that grade level target for all of our grade levels at every season. So if I am looking at, it doesn't matter if it's STAR, Acadience, iStation, FastBridge, Amira, if that student is below the 40th percentile, then that is the trigger of there is something going on that we need to investigate further. Beyond that, I know you are needing more information, and that's what we're trying to get out to you in the next couple of days. But we want to make sure that what we get to you is accurate, because there is nothing worse than getting something out for the sake of putting it up and then finding out that we've created more problems. Okay, so I sincerely apologize on that, that we are wanting to make sure that what we have for you is accurate and helpful. But in the meantime, for those of you that are already working on that assessment, keeping in mind that 40th percentile equivalent for all of our grade levels, that is the grade level target that we're shooting for. If they're not there, then we need to move forward. With that is our individualized program of reading instruction. It has been updated this year to make sure that we have all of our new available screeners on here. I'm going to put it down here, but we also have where we can report out about dyslexia. Our dyslexia screening, which is going to be used, and the results, whether they're at risk or not at risk. We have put on here as many places as we can think a statement that says that the screening tool is not in any way, shape, or form designed to be a diagnosis of dyslexia or any other learning difficulty. It is giving us a quick snapshot if the student is at risk for difficulties in reading to guide our instruction. But this is not meant to trigger child find for special education. A student who is at risk for dyslexia or characteristics of dyslexia does not automatically need an IEP, nor do they need a full educational evaluation to even be considered for such. A lot of times what these kiddos are needing are really good targeted instruction, and then to be able to move on. If they are not making the progress that they need to make, that's when we would consider other options. But that is not going to be our first initial go-to. If for those of you that were able to come to engage, you probably heard me say it every single session, I'm a general education teacher. This was placed in curriculum and instruction under general education for a reason. Screening is not a tool for special education identification. Screening is a tool to help guide the instruction and intervention we provide in the general education classroom. It can lead to identifying where we might need additional support through special services, but that is not the original intent, nor is it the sole purpose that we would look at. Okay, so I've got it. I always have to get on my soapbox just a little bit there. This is something we do through our gen ed. So the idea would be that we would provide our universal screening, and we have a couple of different routes we can hit. We can then immediately turn around and then screen for characteristics of dyslexia for those students who are below the target. Remember, we do not screen all of our K-3 students for characteristics of dyslexia. We screen those students who are below that 40th percentile on the universal screener. And we're going to use the data from our universal screener along with the dyslexia part, because it's usually just an additional subtest to make this determination. So for example, if I'm using Acadience, I'm going to use Acadience. I'm going to give that information. Acadience, through their universal screening, already is covering a lot of this, what's required, but they might have needed a little bit more. So that's where that PAST comes in. The PAST is not the dyslexia screener. The dyslexia screener is Acadience along with PAST. It's all of the data together. There's not just one single number, which is what's making this a little bit more difficult. I can't point to a number to say, here's the magic number for the student has dyslexia or does not. Okay, it doesn't work that way because this is on a continuum. So with our timeline, we can give our universal screening, and we can either immediately turn around and give that screening assessment for dyslexia and then write our IPRI and move forward from there. We also know, however, there are some schools that have these conferences very early in the year, and they will not have time to complete the additional battery of dyslexia screening before they need to meet with parents. So the other option is to give the universal screening, have that IPRI so that we can have that conference with parents. And on this section right here, you'll notice there's a place to mark that we are screening for characteristics of dyslexia. It has not yet been completed. It will be completed by November 1 because that's our deadline, or for our kindergarten students by February 15th. And we'll get those results communicated in an addendum. Okay, we have that addendum for you if it's needed. If you're able to put everything on this original document, you don't need the addendum. If you need the additional time and you need to add on to it, that keeps you from having to fill out something and incorrectly, and it also keeps the parents from having to sign something with open spots. I know as a parent, I don't like to sign my name to anything where there's things that are not complete. I want to be able to sign a complete document. So this allows us to be able to complete this for the parent. Okay. So just be aware that that's there. This is that addendum that I talked about. If we do need to add on to it, you'll just notice that we're just identifying this information. This is being attached to the IPRI. So we have all the other information already there. Risk or at risk. And are we going to make adjustments to the program of reading instruction? It might be that the interventions that we've decided on in the intervention plan is really just what we need. And the data from the dyslexia screening just confirmed that. So we don't need to make any changes, but we still need to communicate those results to the parent. Or it might be that we have this additional data, and where we've been thinking the problem was one thing, we've discovered we've got a whole other set of issues on our hands and we need to make some changes. So that's where we can make that description. This does not require an additional conference. You can fill this out and send this home. Okay. Let's see here. What else have we got? And then the other question, this was the other point of confusion. If you will recall, on the IPRI, we do have a requirement for students who are in 4th or 5th grade that are promoted through an exemption or through a committee to continue to receive interventions. And we need to be able to document that. We thought we would do something really cool, like try to condense everything to one document so that people weren't looking for things. And what we discovered is that we actually created more confusion. And so when we do that, we go back and we make a change. So you'll notice that the IPRI is only addressing K through 3. We do have another document now that has that documentation for students that are past 3rd grade. This is not a full IPRI. It's just letting us know what is it that this student that is required to get intervention, how are we documenting that? So for some of our students, so we get this question quite a lot. Some of our students who are receiving intervention through special services in 4th and 5th grade, they have an IEP, and those goals in the IEP are addressing reading and their reading needs. So the IEP is really documenting the intervention that's taking place for that student. That's fine. We don't need to do anything else there. But for students who don't have that type of documentation, we need to be able to document that we have followed the law, that we have provided that intervention for that student. So here is a way that we can do that without having to be quite as confused. Hopefully this is not creating more confusion for you. But we did want to make sure that you had that ability to provide that documentation. The other question that I received, because I have a couple of friends that like to make sure that I have questions in advance, and so we try to make sure we get those, is you'll notice on the conferences here at the very back, on the signature page here, we have our initial conference, and then we have the follow-up conference, which you'll notice says optional. We have poured over the statute and all of the administrative rules and all the legal documents to try to figure out where this idea was that we had to have 2 signatures in a year. We can't find it anywhere. I think it's something that got started, and then because we got so used to it, we've kept going. Is it a good practice? Absolutely it is. If I have a student that's struggling, as a parent, I would love to have that spring update, but it's not a statutory requirement. This also comes into play when I sometimes have students that are identified after that mid-year screening, and we don't start a plan until later in the year. And then we have schools scrambling, trying to get a second signature when we just started at mid-year. So some things to think about there, and as a district can decide what works best for making sure that you're meeting those needs. But as far as a state statutory requirement, we cannot find in those documents where it is a requirement that you have 2 signatures a year. So hopefully that will alleviate a little bit of pressure come this spring when you're trying to get those parents in and have that communication. So that was a question. Another question that's come up is, will this be an editable form? Yes, we will make this an editable form. It's probably going to be this weekend before I have an opportunity to sit at the computer to do that, though. So we're trying to get there as quickly as we can. But just like you're dealing with at the school, I know you're swamped. So are we. So we're just trying to make sure that we can get the things to you as quickly as we can that you might need. I think that takes care of the questions that I got in advance. Let me pause there for a moment, Sharon and Brenda, and ask, last point, let me get this last bullet. Parent letters. So when we have a student that is at risk for characteristics of dyslexia, we are required to send a parent letter with information and resources about dyslexia. We will have that for you. It'll be posted by next week, so that you do not need to create that on your own. We are just trying to make sure that we, again, have the correct information, and it has to go through those checks and balances to make sure that our leadership approves of what's going out there, and that we're really giving good information. It's amazing, all of the experts on dyslexia that have suddenly come out of the woodwork that are not necessarily experts. So we want to make sure that the information that we send you to is good and reliable. Okay, Brenda and Sharon, I'm going to stop for a moment.
So we have a lot of questions, but I think Sharon and Mary have been trying to answer them as we go, and you've answered some of them. So I think I'm just going to start at the bottom for clarification ones. And if I miss something, you can retype it for us, because I know as she went, she answered some of your questions, and Sharon put a lot of links in there to answer. And I know Mary answered about early childhood. You're welcome to sign up for the cohort of letters that's out, the applications out there for. So I'm just going to go backward. Do we need the IPRI for students K-3 who are on an IEP for reading?
Okay, great question. Yes, we do. There is nothing in legislation that exempts students receiving special education services from those requirements. Now, I will say, and this is one of the things we have constantly said, if there is an active IEP, especially that deals with reading, the goals of the IPRI should align with the goals on the IEP. But there are requirements for written notice contained within state law that are not in federal law, which is what the IEP is for. So we do have to have that documentation. That's really just kind of what we have to be, but they should align. There shouldn't be a separate RSA plan separate from their IEP plan. They should be working together, because our whole goal is, how do we help this kiddo learn how to read?
Do we need the IPRI for I'm sorry. Can you clarify which students in grades 4 and 5 should have an IPRI?
Students who are promoted through Pathway 3, good cause exemption, and students who are promoted with a committee, a probationary promotion through the student reading proficiency team. Think about it this way. These are students who have not been able to demonstrate through an assessment the proficiency level they need to have, that they're working on grade level.
And there was a question about the paperwork for students past 3rd grade.
Okay, so that would be,
where do you locate it?
Great question. Okay, so if you go back to our RSA coordinator page, past this table that's causing some of that confusion, you'll see our IPRI, our 3rd grade promotion retention. Okay, and so then we have our ongoing review, our documentation of ongoing intervention for 4th and 5th grade. So there's, under that documentation, we have documenting our promotion retention decisions and that ongoing intervention for 4th and 5th grade. I see one while you're looking. Is, do you have to
include the mid-year? Okay.
Yeah, that's, I think we saw the same one. Do we have to have the mid-year promotion policy? That is specifically stated in the statute, that we have to provide the parents in the written notice, the mid-year promotion policy. Does it have to be on your IPRI? No, you can find another way to provide it, but you have to get documentation that parents have received it, which means another piece of paper to keep with their signature. So if that's one of the reasons that we put that there. If you have it on a link and you put the link where parents can go to it, that would be sufficient. You just need to make sure that they know where to access it and where to find your policy for that mid-year promotion. And remember, mid-year promotion are for those students who are retained in 3rd grade and that are now being promoted to 4th grade prior to November 1. Okay, there's some very specific rules around mid-year promotion. It's only for students that were originally retained in 3rd grade, and that the team has decided that that student made a lot of progress and it's going to be promoted to 4th grade, but that decision has to be made prior to November 1. Okay, I'm looking at our time. While you're kind of scanning the last of that, Brenda, I'm going to make sure that we're aware of a couple of other things on this agenda. We have some reviews coming up this year. Like I mentioned earlier, that Airtable with the Science of Reading Professional Development, we will be putting out a request for information for vendors to add on, to update that existing list. In other words, nothing will come off. We will only add on. So keep that in mind. If you have a professional development that addresses reading instruction for the elementary grades, that has those good effective practices, you can ask that vendor to watch out for that RFI, ask them to submit for that. It will probably be out in October is our current goal. If you are looking for where to find that, if you go on our State Department website under resources, you will find where it says bid solicitations. All they have to do is click that, and those would be current RFI. RFI just means request for information. In other words, we're not buying anything at the State Department. We are just getting some information for our districts. But this is where vendors can find that information. We will also be doing another review this fall/winter for all to update the list of alternative assessments for Good Cause Exemption 3. We have realized that we've been so wrapped up with screeners and some of the other new legal updates that this list of assessments is actually out of date and needs to be reviewed. So we will make sure that that's getting done so that we will have more current list for you to consider for that Good Cause Exemption 3 consideration. Right now, we have the ITBS, the SAT-10, the Terra Nova. So that will be a completely new review. And then because of COVID, because COVID messed up everything, we had some vendors that had wanted to submit for consideration as either a universal screener or dyslexia screener or both. But we do look very heavily at what we call reliability and validity studies. And these are some very technical studies that are time consuming and expensive for vendors to do. And because of COVID, they were unable to complete those studies in time that we needed for this last review. So we have had some that asked us to open this back up for their consideration. We will not be taking anything off of the list. All we will be doing is providing updates if any of them qualify for that. So just be aware that there may be some talk in the spring, because we will not be looking at that probably until the spring if there's anything added, but we will keep you updated as we move forward there. We wanted to, it sounds like Mary's done a great job already of looking at our Oklahoma Science of Reading Academies. Those are still going strong. We are now in our second year of this. If you will recall that we have allocated $13 million of our American Recovery Plan federal COVID relief dollars towards making sure that our teachers are able to effectively teach our kids for reading. And to use that, we're using a program called Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling, or LETRS. A lot of you are very familiar with that. You've heard us talk about it often. This is a focus on educators who work with K-3 students, but we have a lot of other teachers, maybe that work with 4th and 5th grade. We've had a few middle school. We've had some pre-K that would like to engage. So we're happy with space, as space allows, happy to have them come and play with us. Do keep in mind, this is a 2-year commitment, that there is no cost to educators. This is about a $1,300 value program by the time we do the online work and going to the trainings. So it's quite hefty if you're ever trying to do it on your own or your district is trying to provide it. It is quite the time commitment, but I don't know that I've talked to anyone yet who has said it is not one of the best trainings they have ever gone to and has completely changed how they view instruction. Cohort 3 registration is open until the end of this week, this Friday. Cohort 3 does not mean you're starting on group 3. This means that this is the 3rd group to start from the beginning to go through this process. So if you would like to register, you can go to the Science of Reading webpage. You'll see this right here, and there's a button that says Cohort 3 registration right there towards the top. We will have one more cohort that begins in January. After that, that is when we will only have the funding to finish the ones that have already registered at that point. So there will not be another registration after the next cohort that starts in January. So if this is something you've been thinking about, wondering about, Maybe you're not quite ready yet. Keep in mind that January is kind of our last chance, at least as for this round, that we know for sure that we will be able to offer. And then if you are, recall, I always try to find some upcoming professional development just to make sure we're aware of things that are happening in our state or virtually that we have access to. The Oklahoma State Higher Regents offers a reading conference each fall this year. This will be, you'll have the option to either attend online or at the Rose State College Student Union. I do not know if the online will be recorded for later viewing or not. That would be a question that we would need to check with them on. You can find the online registration. There are registration fees for in-person or virtual. So there's some different, it's cheaper to go virtually than it is to go in person. They have extended their early bird registration for the next few days. So you might hop on there if that's something that interests you. The keynote speaker this year is Dr. Heidi Ann Mesmer. So she is really a great speaker on especially oral language and early childhood, early literacy. In the afternoon, there will be a panel, and our own Sharon Morgan will be a part of that panel as well. So this would be an opportunity to hear her expertise. And I guess Jason Stevenson, our secondary director, will also be on that panel. So we'll have a couple of different colleagues to be able to listen to and learn from. Okay, I wanted to remind you, because I know some of you will need to hop off for other meetings. Our next meeting will be September 14th. It will be very quick, a very quick turnaround, but we know this time of year we need a little bit more support. Again, we will use the same links as we've used here, and we will make sure that those meeting recordings are on that RSA coordinator webpage. We will make sure, because I know we have not gotten to all of the questions that are in the chat. There is absolutely no way we could have. We'd probably be here till midnight. Love you guys, but not that much. So we are going to make sure that we save this chat and get back to those questions, whether we need to send some information out through a newsletter, if we need it pretty quickly. We can certainly do that, or some of these we will probably start off in September addressing if they are able to wait a little bit. I have a feeling most of these are pretty urgent and will be coming out pretty quickly with either that guidance specific to screeners or through a newsletter announcements to make sure that we're getting some of those frequently asked questions addressed.
So Melissa, a lot of the questions were about screeners and dyslexia. And so I kind of skipped over those to get to the reports that were due quickly. A couple of questions that people might have come on later that have been asked again that you just might want the guys and the cut scores.
Can you say that one more time? You froze just a little bit in the middle of that question.
So I know you answered about the technical guidance and cut scores, but a lot of people asked that after you did that. So I thought they may have come on later. So if you might want to say that one more time. And one other question is about sample parent letters for sending things home.
Perfect. Okay, thank you for that reminder. So the technical guidance, we were hoping to have that up today so that you would have that. We've got a couple of calls into a couple of our vendors where we are getting some questions that we can't get answers to, and we want to make sure that what we have on the webpage is accurate and not causing any additional problems by putting that up there. So we know you are needing that desperately. We're trying to get that out in the next couple of days so that you will have that, but we want to make sure that what we have is accurate. So like I said, I've got one vendor I was emailing back and forth at 2 a.m. this morning because that's when she was up and that's when I was up. So I promise you we're getting there as quickly as we possibly can. But I know Renaissance, I've just kind of slipped through. I know I'm seeing a lot of questions about STAR and Renaissance. That's who we're trying to get those answers from. So we want to make sure that we are making sure that we're doing the best thing for our kids. That's there, and making sure that they are that we're really trying to do what's really intended here is making sure that we have the needs identified for our kids to be able to move forward. And I know that can be really tough and it's hard for us. So I appreciate your patience. I understand the frustration, and we will get there quickly. As far as parent letters, I know that there is a parent letter that is required for students who are identified with characteristics of dyslexia. We are getting that developed. We will have that out for you in the next week on the RSA coordinator webpage. We will also send out a link in the newsletter so that you can find it quickly and you're not having to come back and check. It'll be right there. So just that awareness, it's there. Okay, it is 3:01. Brenda, is there anything else just absolutely burning that we need to get right this second?
I was just going to mention that a couple of people have said that if you go into the RSA page, there's a lot of information there that will help with questions. And they said they got a lot of their questions answered there. So if we didn't get to your question and you can't wait till we can get to your question, that might be a good place to go.
Yeah. And I'm just also going to reiterate for those that maybe got on a little bit late, if you have sent me an email in the last few days with a question, I promise I am getting to it. It has been, this is what always happens right before a report is due, is all of a sudden everybody has the questions that we need to answer right then. So it's pretty, my inbox is pretty full. I'm not ignoring it. I just haven't had the minutes in the day to open them up. So we will get there. We will get that question. Thank you for your patience on that. Keep in mind that Sharon and Brenda are available to help with that too, to at least vet, as well as we introduced Dylan Savage at the very beginning of our meeting today. So for those of you that got on a little bit late, Dylan is our new reporting specialist. He is learning quickly all about RSA reports. He does not have a reading background, but he is a great guy when it comes to data and how to work with the technology. But he also knows how to get a hold of me pretty quickly too. If it's a question that you're needing something, he will get a hold of me to find out. I also wanted to take a moment. Mary, are you still on the call? Is Mary Mazariegos, I'm going to say it right eventually, has joined our OSDE team as well as our executive director of literacy. So she is also helping out. You might be hearing from her as well. So if you have some other questions that you're needing to get help with, I'm sure if she knows the answer, great. And if she doesn't know the answer, she certainly knows who to go find out. And we will get to everybody, we promise. So, all right, with that being said, we are going to let you go. Hopefully have some more rain this week. I know it's getting a little cloudy outside my window. And I hope everyone has a wonderful, relaxing Labor Day, able to catch your breath after the craziness of the first of the year, and we will see you again on September 14th. And let us know if you need something before then, and we will do our best to take care of it. All right. Thanks, guys.